Hello guys and welcome back to another video. So over the past few days what I've been doing is playing on my DPS characters and joining random groups and really paying attention to what the different tanks are doing. And in particular paying attention to what they either do wrongly or do not as well as they should. Or if we're talking about being the best they can be, not maximizing their potential. So hopefully, because this is a very general, broad advice, it should apply to you, and I do hope that it will help you improve your own tanking skills or perhaps break down some misconceptions you may have had as a newer player looking to tank for the first time. So one of the big ones is that individuals may think, alright, I've got my heavy armor on, I've got my sword on board, now all I need to do is go ahead and slot pierce armor, and I'm good to go. As long as I'm maintaining aggro on the boss, I really don't have to do anything else. I can do as I wish. And, if we lose or wipe at that point, it's not my fault. I maintained aggro, I did my job. Now, for easier content, you can get by with that mentality, but as you get into harder content, and trials especially, it's not just your job to taunt. In fact, that might even be a very minor part of your job. Your job is also to try and actually provide as much group utility as you can, while still maintaining your own life, not dying, and sort of also being tanky enough to the point where you're not going to put too much stress on the healers, which means they're allowed to actually focus on debuffing and buffing your allies, meaning that the raid goes a lot more smoother, or the dungeon. So when I say that just taunting isn't your job, let's talk about one of the first things I want to highlight, and that is the importance of heroic slash. Now in my other videos I do mention the minor heroism component being the key part, as we want to try and maximize the amount of ultimates we have, as in 4-man content there's less of them going around, and aggressive warhorn, as you see here, is a really important buff to our allies, as it's going to give them more sustainability, going to boost their damage, and also make them more tanky, which is really important to stop unwanted deaths. However, just as equally important really is a minor maim component, because when I talk about providing utility, being a tank is not being selfish and trying to make yourself really tanky. And likewise, it's not just, aggroing something and being really squishy and dying. It's a nice mix of utility and survivability that you want to be aiming with. And Heroic Slash showcases this perfectly, because yes, it reduces the damage that you're taking, but also it reduces any residual damage, if it's coming from the target you're actually hitting with this ability, that's going to be applied to your group. So for example, the easiest one and probably the most familiar one is Vet Spindle Clutch 1 Last Boss. And even though you're taunting it, that boss will periodically turn around and fire a projectile at a DPS or a healer, which will one-shot them if you don't have this applied. So you really get the importance. Now the next aspect that I want to cover is really the importance, and to stress the importance, of having both a shield and a heal on your front bar if possible. Now, DKs demonstrate this best, and first of all, shielding is important because it makes us less reliant on the healer, which in turn allows them to have higher combat per uptime, things like that, allows them to focus on the other parts of their job and worry less about us. Now, the reason that this kind of shielding, Igneous Shield, particularly excels is that not only does it make us more tanky, but it also provides our group with a shield, which in turn means they're less likely to actually die to some kind of AoE effect. And, well, the benefit of that is that less people dying means more chance of completing the particular content you're attempting. Now, in a similar vein, having a heal is also nice because it's going to heal us, if it's an AoE heal, as well as healing our allies. And that is the best type of heal, because as a tank, we don't want to have selfish options. We want to have, yes, enough survivability to not die, but we ideally want to have that nice balance where we're also providing some good group utility for heals or for debuffs, such as what we've already talked about with Heroic Slash. Now, one of the things that people like to do, and this is why I bring it up right now, is they like to think, okay, yes, Igneous Shields is great, I'm going to use that for sure, but look, I don't feel too comfortable with having something like Hardened Armor on my back bar, let's just get rid of Vigour, At the very least, I've gotten rid of Vigour. That means, yeah, I lose out on it, but I can put on my back bar, right? It's not such a big deal. Now, let's just imagine, hypothetically speaking, that people are taking damage, and we've used Igneous, right? But Igneous isn't going to heal our allies. It's just going to give them a damage shield, and if damage is incoming quite high, their health bars are not going to get restored, assuming that the healer perhaps, I don't know, let's pretend the healer is struggling. Now, let's just say, oh, don't worry guys, I've got Hardened Armor, and you get the idea. It's not going to do anything. And if we're taking a lot of damage, if we have to swap and suddenly cast Vigour now, that's a couple of seconds, and we even drop block, which means we might actually, panic, drop block to get Vigour, and suddenly get hit in the face, and we'll die. It'll just exacerbate the situation. So if we have Vigour on our front bar, this means that we can very reliably heal them in a pinch and very quickly. And that's why I think it's really important to have reactive abilities on your front bar. Hardened Armor in itself, yes, it provides a minor damage shield, but other than that kind of selfish minor damage shield, it provides really nothing to the group. All it does, and this is something I will say in support of it, is it does make you perhaps feel more comfortable in newer content you're not familiar with, as bar swapping in trials you're not familiar with can sometimes get you killed if you time it incorrectly. So it is a comfort choice, but I just really want to hammer it home that even though it is a comfort choice, that does not mean it's the better choice if you want to try and optimize your build and optimize the amount of sort of benefit you're providing your group. So you may be thinking, all right, I can see the benefit there of having Vigour instead of this on my front bar, but what other synergies does it have? What else does it have to sell it? And actually, there are a few more benefits. And probably the most important one is that we have Vigour on our front bar. It actually lines up very well with the major mending buff, meaning as you see here, that all of the echoing Vigour ticks are going to get empowered with a 25% healing that is provided by igneous shields, if we do it correctly. So as you can see here, if we were to do it by swapping to our back bar, it would mean that more ticks would actually not get empowered. And even if we do, perhaps not always have the last tick empowered by our igneous shields because a little bit of lag, at the very least, what it means is that we're sort of making our healing more powerful as much as we can. And if we lose out on maybe 3 ticks because our bar swapping is a bit clunky, then you get the idea. Echoing Vigour's value just goes down. So that's a nice interaction there. Now, let's just talk very quickly about other classes, because I haven't dwelled too much on that. And actually, it's very interesting, because I think that classes which don't have strong self-shields, such as igneous shields, actually struggle when they're learning to tank for the first time. Now, the case I have in mind is that I was observing a Nightblade tank doing planar inhibitor. And if you're not familiar with that fight, whoever holds the planar inhibitor gets a dot increasing on them over time. And ideally, if you are tanking that fight, you want to try and hold it to blue phase before you reset it, because it allows your group to get more DPS down. However, unfortunately for Nightblades, what we do have is a lot of heals, but with healing, the issue is if there's a lot of incoming DPS, it means our health bars are going to be rocketing back up and forth, and it's not going to have the artificial barrier that something like Igneous Shields provides. And this means the healer will be feeling really stressed and feel like he has to constantly heal you. However, probably the best shield I can recommend for tanks other than DKs would be Annulment morphed in to Magicka. I've been reading too many patch notes, to be honest. Morphed in to Harness Magicka. And so what you do is you'll cast this alongside your heals. Imagine it's a refreshing path or something. And this is going to allow us to tank whatever we're taking alongside healing us back up to full. In addition, Harness Magicka is going to be restoring Magicka to you. And this acts in a sense like extra Magicka recovery, which, dependent on your class and playstyle, is going to mean more heals, more buff uptime, good things like that. This does mean that I rate it higher than other abilities, such as Blazing Shield or Hardened Ward, for example, as these don't have that beneficial component and are a little bit more selfish. Now you may be thinking at this point, well, I've watched your Nightblade build already, that video, and I've seen that actually you don't have a shield there. Now the reason for that is because, as you can see, the bar is quite cramped, and really you have a choice to make dependent on the fight. So in some fights, such as in VMOL hard mode, Absorb Magic is really crucial for helping heal yourself and survive through the minigun phase if you're main tanking it. However, and I haven't tested it, I'm sure it may be similar, if it's not a situation where you need that extra amount of block decrease damage-wise and also extra block cost reduction, you can go ahead and replace this with Annulment on your Nightblade, perhaps even on your Templar or your Sorcerer, and I think it would be a pretty good idea to do so, as obviously Absorb Magic doesn't work on every single damaging effect in the game and only interacts with projectiles. Just something to keep in mind, because I thought I would mention it, as you may have been a little bit confused if you'd already watched that video. Now the last thing I want to cover is to just go back to another reason why we do have this on our back bar. And we've already talked about the dangers of bar swapping, and this is kind of just to reiterate it. By having these 20-second buffs on our back bar, in comparison to something like the 5 seconds, the 6 seconds, or the 12 to 9 seconds of these buffs, it means that we're going to effectively half the amount of time we're going to bar swap. It really is solid, and I hope I have sold that to you. And as a quick sum up of the rest of the facets, try and keep the less used abilities on your back bar. As I said, Chains used periodically in the fight, likewise with Talons, and if we want Minor Maim, and we're only fighting 1 or 2 enemies at a time, then our Heroic Slash is going to be better because it also provides us with Minor Heroism. And our front bar, if we see our allies taking damage, Hardened Ward, or, sorry, not Hardened Ward, using Hardened Armor is not going to save them. Using Vigour plus Igneous might. And so try and keep as many supportive abilities on your front bar as possible. Otherwise you may end up with some angry dead DPS and consequently not clearing the dungeon. Also, just as you may be wondering why I have this on my front bar, this is to diminish the amount of ultimate we lose if we have a high ultimate regeneration build, because if you do bar swap to cast Warhorn, you may lose maybe 10 ultimate if you bar swap a little bit late, which in turn in a long fight might mean you're missing a few, well, probably only missing one, which is still a big deal. Missing one Warhorn in a long fight can, interrupt DPS to a fair degree. Anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed my video, and as always, if you need any help, please do not hesitate to ask. Happy to answer any questions you may have in the comments. And yeah, until next time, guys, take care. Bye for now.